Just to start, we're going to demonstrate for the first time ever with a full rig, the 12 lighting states that are available in every theatre. So can we have the first lighting state, the upstage wash? The stage right, the centre stage wash, and stage left. A downstage centre spot, you might want to use this for a soliloquy or someone's got a very important piece of information. Then a full stage wash. And then we've got that in multiple colours. We've got that in red, and we've got it in blue. Ooh. And we also have the foliage effect. Ooh. The wonderful foliage effect. We also have the windows, and then we'll have two spots, a downstage right and a downstage left spot. On the right. And on the left. So yeah, the 12 lighting states that you will have available for you in every theatre. We'll talk a bit more later about how to mark up your tech book, so do not worry if the thought of doing light and sound is very, very scary. I'm going to hand over to Brian, who is going to show us now how we might want to use some of these lighting states.
So, we have the scene where the witches encounter the Scottish hero and his mate Banquo. And we want to just go through it sort of 5 or so different ways so that those of you who may not have seen these lighting states in action, or perhaps you have, but you're looking for new ideas for how you might approach your lighting plot, can just see those different experiments. So the first thing we want to try is no lighting changes whatsoever. Essentially, a whitewash across the stage that is undifferentiated throughout the whole scene. And it should be said that that is a completely valid choice for a way to do your tech. So, in fact, that is how Shakespeare at the Globe did, because he didn't have electric lighting. He just had the sun in an undifferentiated way across the whole stage.
A drum, Macbeth doth come.
So foul and fair a day I have not seen.
What are these, so withered and so wild in their attire, that look not like the inhabitants of the earth, and yet are on't? Live you, or are you aught that man may question?
Speak if you can. What are you?
All hail Macbeth! Hail to thee, Thane of Glamis! All hail Macbeth! Hail to thee, Thane of Cawdor!
All hail Macbeth, that shall be king hereafter.
You have 20 lighting cues at your disposal. You want to pick them for significant moments if you're going to use them. And I would say that this is a supernatural scene. It's the moment where our hero is encountering the witches for the first time. So we might want to play with some lighting states. As we said, whitewash valid, but let's try something else.
If you can look into the sands of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favours nor your hate.
Hail! Hail!
Hail!
Lesser than Macbeth and greater.
Not so happy, yet much happier.
Thou shalt get king, so thou be known. So all hail Macbeth and Banquo.
I know I'm Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief, no more than Cawdor. Speak, I charge you.
Whither are they vanished?
Your children shall be kings.
You shall be king.
So once you've had an opportunity to think about what your sound and light for your production is going to be, the next stage is to write that up in a way that you can communicate that to your technician. So you'll be able to design what your sound and light looks like, and then you need to write that up so that on the day the technician can operate it for you. We're going to look at how you do that, and I'll say to start with, all of the resources here are available in your teacher handbook. So that's where you get the templates that we're about to show here. On the day of your production, as many of you will know, there's 45 minutes for a technical rehearsal, and after that there's 30 minutes for your dress rehearsal on the day of your performance. The less tech you have, the smoother and quicker your tech will be, and what that means is that there'll be more time for you to work on your dress rehearsal or for you to rerun any scenes on stage that you just quite like to see again in your tech time. Our technical rehearsals in SSF run cue to cue. If anyone's not familiar with cue to cue, what it means is that we only rehearse the parts where there's a change in light and sound, meaning that we might skip out some sections to get to the next part when there is light and sound. It's a really great idea to practice with your students in your classroom, running cue to cue, so stopping at a certain point and picking up at another point if that's useful. And worth reassuring your students as well that the benefit of that rehearsal is for the technician to be able to make sure that all the tech is right. So if they're stopped at any moment in the production, it's not that they're doing anything wrong, it's just that we're trying to make sure that all the tech is exactly as we'd like it to be. If for any reason you prefer not to have your technical rehearsal running cue to cue, so for example if it's easier for your students to do the whole production through without stopping and starting, just let us know and we'll be happy to find a way to make your technical rehearsal happen whilst you're doing that as well, if stopping and starting is a bit tricky. The technician and SSF staff on the day will adjust it and make sure it looks how you want it to look. So that is the idea of a technical rehearsal. We're going to be here to work with you to make sure that the vision that you've had when you thought about what your tech looks like is realised in your final show. So there'll be lots of opportunities to change things if there's anything that you want to adjust. So, marking up your book. Your tech book is what tells the theatre technician what you would like in your show in terms of light and sound. Your book has two parts. So the first part is the script. That's when you tell the technician when you would like a change in lighting and sound. And the second part is your cue list, where you write what the change is that you'd like to happen. It says you'll need to bring 2 copies of your book to the technician on the day of your performance. And we're also going to ask you to send 2 copies to the theatre in advance, and your coordinator will email you to let you know who's the best person to send that to. It says here, label your book clearly. Don't forget to put your name on it and your school name on it and your play name on it so we know who you are. If you have sound effects like the ones that we've demonstrated here, they should be brought on a CD or a memory stick on the day of your performance. Your coordinator will email you in advance and let you know the best format to have that sound in. And it's a good idea to bring a spare copy of your sound effects on the day of your performance just in case anything goes wrong. So everything you're sending in advance and then you're also bringing on the day to make sure that we have backup copies. So let's have a look at how you would mark up your script to start with. So here's the extract that we've just looked at. And the first thing that we need to do on this page is tell the technician when we would like a change of sound and light to be. So in this instance, like we did here, we're going to say that this is the start of the scene in our imagined version. And so we need there to be a lighting state that happens before anyone gets on stage. So on our script, we draw an arrow and we write light 1, so we know that's the first time that happens. We then go over to the sheet where we're going to say our cues. This again you can find in your teacher director handbook, and this is what we tell the technician what is going to happen. We can see that it's light 1, it's our first lighting change. It happens on page number 1. I've written the numbers of the state that we want to happen. So in this case, I've chosen, for example, to have the foliage, which was the green, and a spot in the middle. You'll be able to tell what numbers those states are in your teacher director handbook. They're all numbered, so you just pick out which numbers you want to use. Brightness, I've put percentages here, so I've put 100% and 80%. If you're not sure which brightness you need, you can put an adjective there to roughly describe what you think it will be. So you can put very bright or dim or whatever it is. Speed, like we saw, there's an option to have a snap, so a light could snap on very quickly or fade in very slowly. Because this is the first scene, we want it to be preset before anything comes on. So that means it doesn't need to have its speed because it's going to be there already. So speed, NA, and scene, this is any notes that we want to give the technician. The notes that I'm giving are preset, so this is the lighting that happens before the show starts, and I've given them an adjective, spooky, to help them know what the mood is. So the next cue we're going to look at is the lovely change that we saw that Brian was directing, where the witches disappear, and it's Macbeth and Banquo that are left there. So we want the light to change on speak, I charge you. And here it's a little bit of a technical fault. You can see it's slightly in between the 2 words, but what you can do is you can draw a circle on where you want the lighting change to happen around a word if you have a very exact place that you want it to happen. So here it might be you. We're writing light 2. Because it's our second lighting cue. And then we go back to our cue sheet to just fill in the detail there. In this instance, what we want to do is still on page number 1, we've put 1. We want to keep lighting state number 5, which is the foliage, and we want the spot to disappear, or it could be the other way, depending on what you want. Worth noting here, we don't need to write when a light disappears. We just write what it looks like the next time, if that makes sense to people. So every time you do a lighting cue, it's like a blank slate and you're putting in everything. So the state number 9 has disappeared, but we don't need to write 9 disappears. We just need to write what's going to happen now, which is just 5 by itself. Brightness, I'm going to put 100%. I'm going to put 3 seconds, so it takes 3 seconds to fade in. And my notes to the technician is Macbeth and Banquo are left in a bright light so that he knows or she knows when that cue happens. So that's how you tell the technician about the light for your show. Next, let's have a look at sound cues. We're going to say that there's a sound cue that happens, like in the example that we did, where a sound happens at the same time that first light comes on. So we're going to write sound 1. We're going to imagine that music starts, and then we want that music to be switched off. So we're going to put sound cue 2 for the music to be switched off. So we go to our sheet, and very similar to the lighting, page number 1, track number, so what number it is on your CD. In this instance, it's number 1. Volume, I've put 100% because I want it to be very loud, but again, on the day, you can play around with this and see what volume you'd like. Duration, we're going to tell the technician later when it turns off, so we don't need to say how long it's going to be. And notes, in doubt track is the witch's cue to enter, so that's helpful to the technician and to your cast on stage as well. For our second one, that was the one later on when we want the sound to go off. So I've put volume off, and I've put 3-second fade off. And it should say here, audio fades the same time that the light changes. So you can just give a note about how the audio and the sound, how the light and the sound work together in that case. So those are the kind of basics of kind of marking up for sound and light. It's all written up in your teacher director handbook, so you'll be able to see all of this in detail. And we'll be emailing you, as I say, with details of when you need to do this and who it needs to go to after you've done it. But otherwise, we are always around to help with any questions. There's more resources, as always, on our website in our technical section.